Hi, everybody. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, Texas, on Tuesday, February the 6th, and welcome to our commentary. Just a quick opinion here. The border bill, or whatever they call it, that came from the Senate. Um, there are some things about it that are good. I'm not saying it's 100% bad, but I think it's a little bit of putting the cart before the horse. Um, I just don't think this is the solution that we should be implementing right now. We have other things that we need to do before we start talking about that bill. There are some things in it that I like the asylum changes and the catch and release. There are some things that that I like about it, but I believe that before you get to this proposal, you have to do three things. Number one, you have to close the border for about a year. Just close it, at least a year. I mean, maybe longer, but at least a year. And during those 12 months, you can give the Border Patrol a chance to catch their breath. I mean, we've been working them to death and expecting them to do a lot more than they're supposed to do. And for the next 12 months, you can say no more asylum at the border. If you want to apply for asylum, you're going to have to do it formally, or you're going to have to go to another country, but no more of this. I show up at the border and they give me a piece of paper and I get a date with a judge sometime in a distant future. That has to stop, and that would stop if you close the border. And then finally, it would give the judicial system a chance to at least determine, how many of the pending cases are even cases. A lot of these cases, asylum cases, never actually materialize because they're more economic than political. So I think you got to close the border first. You got to give that whole border a year to get itself back together, and then a year from now we can look at the whole thing again, and then maybe we can visit some of the things that are in this proposal, like catch and release and all that kind of stuff. So I just think the timing of this bill is bad, and the White House is blaming the collapse of the bill on President Trump, saying that President Trump is telling the Republicans that they shouldn't vote for the bill. Actually, it's not not President Trump; it's their constituents who are telling them not to support the bill. There are three Democrats I heard who are not supporting the bill: Senator Sanders, Senator Menendez of New Jersey, Sanders, of course, of Vermont, and Senator Padilla of California. He's the new senator who was appointed out there after Senator Feinstein passed away, or was it Feinstein or whatever it was, either Feinstein or when Kamala Harris became vice president. But he's saying no. So that's three right there, three Democrats. And I'd be anxious to hear what Senator Tester of Montana, who's going to have a very tough reelection up there, and of course Senator Manchin, who is not running for reelection, but it'd be interesting to see what he has to say about all of this. So it's just a bad idea. The timing of this was bad. And again, we should focus on closing the border, catching up with all these cases right now in the judiciary. We should catch up with that first, and then look at this thing a year from now after we close the border. Speaking of the border and some of the consequences, I have a post over at the American Thinker today about the debit cards in New York. And by the way, we also had a good conversation with our friend Bill Katz, the editor of Urgent Agenda, on the video that we did on Monday. But this is insane what they're doing in New York. They're handing out debit cards. Now, they say that this is going to save the city money. I don't know about that. But I do know about this, that the residents of New York are already overtaxed. I mean, there's paying taxes everywhere. They get up in the morning, they got to pay a tax. It's ridiculous. And the city of New York really doesn't have the money. I mean, they've been forced to cut back on many things. But this is just another example of how this crisis on the border has brought all this chaos to so many places. Chicago, Denver. I just heard that the mayor of Denver is saying we can't take any more. And frankly, nobody can take any more. You don't bring in 7-8 million people into the country in this fashion without someone contemplating that there were going to be all of these consequences. So bad idea by the city of New York to issue debit cards. And I don't know what to tell you. I mean, look, the residents of New York are going to have to figure this out because they're the ones who voted for these people. But this is just a bad idea to have debit cards issued, I think, to migrants. It's just a very bad idea. You know, everybody's been talking about how the economy is getting better. And yes, there was a better jobs report for December, I think it was, or for January. No question about it. It was a better jobs report. And we are always happy when people work. It's a good thing. But more and more, you're starting to see some of the other things happening in this economy that often go overlooked. Well, one of them is the increase in automobile insurance rates. And I just got my bill a couple of days ago, and my bill went up, even though we're excellent drivers. Well, there's a story that appeared on CBS, and I have a post about this coming out Wednesday morning, talking about how more and more Americans, in fact, it's just about everybody, is getting increases in their automobile insurance rates. And they're pretty hefty increases. 26% is the average, I guess, that people are seeing. And this is the reason why, more and more Americans don't feel that the economy is doing well, because they have to deal with all these little things, whether it's the increase in gas, to heat your home, whether it's the increase in automobile insurance, whether it's rent, whether it's interest rates, whether it's the price of food. I mean, everywhere you look, you can see the impact of this economy, and it's not a good one. And people are being hit between the eyes with all of these increases, and it's not good. It's not fun. It's not something that, frankly, people enjoy. And that's the reason why, regardless of all these good jobs reports that they're getting, people are just not feeling it. And when you get an increase in your automobile rates, insurance rates, you got to pay that every month. So that's something that will upset your budget, to say the least. But that's the reason why people are not jumping up and down saying that the economy is getting better, because of all these things that they have to pay and all these increases they're getting all the time. You know, on Sunday they had an election in El Salvador, and I wrote a post about this over at the American Thinker. And the candidate, President Bukele, was reelected with almost 75% of the vote. It was an amazing reelection. And he's become very popular in El Salvador. And he's popular because he's been able to do in 5 years or 4 years what no one had done before, which is to clean up the country, and specifically clean up all the crime and all the gang violence that was devastating El Salvador. And now El Salvador today, that small country in Central America, is at least a crime-free country for the most part. And people can walk the streets, and they can go out, and the merchants can function without the threat of gangs, showing up, asking money for this or this or this or that. And it's interesting because last night I saw a young man from El Salvador who is 19 years old. So I said to him, well, did you vote in El Salvador? And he said, yeah, I sure did. They can vote, of course. Being out of the country, they can vote. I guess they go to the consulate and vote there. And I said, well, you don't have to tell me who you voted for, but or you can if you want to. You're not obliged to, but just tell me if you want to. And he said, well, I voted for President Bukele. And I said, why? And I said, because he's made my country better. And this is a nice young man who is here in the United States with his family. And he said, my parents also voted for Bukele. And again, we see once again how people will reward a president or a politician who makes their life better. And if you live in El Salvador, there is no question that locking up these thousands and thousands of gang members has made the country better. At least the crime has gone down. So I mentioned in my post that I think President Bukele can now really take El Salvador to the next level, and that is by really bringing in foreign investment so you can make the lives of people in El Salvador better from an economic standpoint. And I think many investors are going to be happy to invest, especially now that the crime rates have gone down as much as they have. So congratulations to President Bukele of El Salvador. He's a really cool-looking guy. He's a good-looking guy, but I mean, he's a really cool-looking guy. He looks like a movie star. and his wife is this beautiful young woman. And I think they have two kids, or she's expecting one right now, something like that. But I mean, there's such a photogenic couple. I mean, if you were a campaign consultant and you were looking for a candidate, you couldn't think of a better one than this one. Beautiful couple, photogenic. I mean, just absolutely lovely, and a good president on top of that. So congratulations to President Bukele. Well, a couple of birthdays that we're going to remember today, and a couple of birthdays near and dear to me. The first one is Babe Ruth. Babe Ruth was born on this day in 1895. He passed away in 1948. He died young from cancer. The Babe Ruth, the great Babe, the great Bambino, as they used to call him. And the other big birthday that we celebrate today is, of course, President Ronald Reagan, who was born on this day in 1911. Now, if I had said to you that Ronald Reagan and Babe Ruth had the same birthday, you would have probably said, no way. But they do. And these are two of the great personalities of the 20th century, of course, in different fields, but two of the most consequential personalities of the 20th century, Babe Ruth, of course, in baseball, and Ronald Reagan in politics. So happy birthday to two of my big heroes, the Babe and the Gipper, as they used to call them in the movies up in heaven. They're celebrating their birthdays today. Thank you for listening. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, and we'll talk to you later. Bye-bye, everybody.